2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. I have my new friend Tom joining me. Tom has a full slate of topics. When we were discussing back and forth what to discuss, I was like, man, I love them all. So we're going to try to do our best to get to them. But first off, thank you, Tom, for being here.
Appreciate you having me on.
Tell us a little about yourself.
I am currently a 44-year-old, single income, no kids with a cat. I own a senior cat named Winston. I live on the north side of Chicago in a neighborhood known as Lakeview East, which is a good 10 to 15 minute walk to Wrigley Field. I walk past that place almost every day. For work, I am a temp for two different brands doing e-commerce work on big box retailer websites. When I'm not working, you'll find me usually at the gym practically every day. I love to spend time with my friends, love trying new restaurants. I am an avid Chicago Bears and Chicago White Sox fan. I am a huge WWE wrestling fan, Jesse. In fact, that's probably the only thing I watch on TV nowadays besides YouTube. Other than that, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I collect vinyl and go to concerts when I decide I want to. I don't go to as many as I used to, but I've actually been picking some up here lately. Glad to get back out there.
White Sox, not Cubs?
Yeah. Sox fan living in Wrigleyville. I was born in a southwest suburb of Chicago known as Bolingbrook. And that was just instilled in me was the Bears and the White Sox at that time. So it just sunk in. And this year has just been beyond my expectations of not only being the worst team in baseball, but also the worst team in the history of baseball. So they outdid my expectations. So good to them.
The Texas Rangers sold their soul last year to get a World Series victory, and this year
Yes.
they have struggled the whole year. But it stings a little less the year after a World Series victory, right?
Favorite wrestler right now for years, for a couple of years, it was LA Knight. I was really trying to get the whole yeah thing over. When me and my friends went to San Antonio for Royal Rumble, he faced Bray Wyatt. I was trying to get yeah over. Wasn't going. And then I went back the next Rumble and it's going crazy. I would say LA Knight and Gunther. I really love both of their stories as wrestlers, as entertainers, especially Gunther. He was a really big guy. And a part of my story is I also used to be really big. And I lost a ton of weight myself and got into the best shape of my life. And that's where he is at. And I really appreciate stories like that and guys that just grind all the way. So that hits home. And that's why I appreciate them so much. Of course, they're great wrestlers too.
Yeah, my son is a huge WWE fan. He would argue that entrance songs are his favorite music of choice. Instead of listening to albums or artists, it's entrance songs that he gets a kick out of. He has showed me LA Knight and CM Punk.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think both of them, and audience, I promise we're going to get on music in just a minute. They are amazing with the mic.
Oh, yeah.
And the story, I remember a columnist named Mark Evanier talked about he went to see Bill Cosby do a stand-up before all the crap came out.
Yes.
And he said he watched him and he was just talking, and all of a sudden he was in the middle of his act and you never saw when he switched over.
Yeah.
And then he went the second night and couldn't catch it again. And he said on the third night, he thinks Cosby saw him and he switched things up enough that once again, he was in the middle of the act before he knew that Mark was doing it. CM Punk and LA Knight both have the ability they're just talking normal.
Yeah.
They're just talking normal, and all of a sudden you realize now they've turned into the shtick. It just, you don't see that seamless where, what other people's, the character, hey brother, I'm gonna take you down. They're
Yep.
just casually talking,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, without knowing it, you're in middle of a promo.
Yep.
And I think the beauty of that is amazing talent.
Yeah. Speaking of CM, he actually is from a town called Lockport where I used to live. For a period of time, I was his banker. If you ever came into the Homer Glen area, which is close to Lockport, we knew Phil. You see him around town here in Chicago quite a bit. You'll see him pop up in certain neighborhoods and things like that. So he still is a big presence, but he actually had a very great promo the other night on Raw. Which they're saying is also one of his best ever. So he's still doing it. He's not much older than I am. I think he's maybe 40. I don't think he's hit 50 yet. So it's always weird to see these guys that I'm watching. They're younger or even just my age as well. When back in the day, they seemed like they were 30, 40 years older than you were. So it's a great time to be a wrestling fan. So exciting, and it's more popular than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to continue to watch it.
Yeah, we went this weekend out of town, and my son bought the audio version of There's Just One Problem by Brian Gerwitz. I don't know if you've read the book. If you're not a wrestling fan, you will love the book. The audio version was amazing. I just laughed at it. The chapter where he talks about Rowdy was touching.
Brian, tremendous writer, co-founded $7 with The Rock, who is my all-time favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
He did the Young Rock show with The Rock, and whenever The Rock comes back, Brian is his personal writer for his storylines. They still have a great relationship, and he's respected around the whole lot of them.
All right, I'm going to get to your origin story in a minute. I want to talk about growing up, but I have to say, tongue in cheek, that you're a crazy guy, cat lady.
Cat lady, man, cat lady guy.
Yeah,
cat owning guy, whatever they're saying. I never saw myself as a cat dad due to an unfortunate circumstance. My mother passed away a couple years ago, and then my father had to go into a permanent resident. I actually had a moment where I thought, I don't know if I have enough room for this cat, or if I could handle this cat. So I actually started looking around, and I'm like, my mother would absolutely terrify and haunt my dreams for the rest of my life. I took him in, and honestly, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. He's been a tremendous companion these last couple of years. I went through a lot of hard things, and he was always by my side. He is struggling a little bit with health nowadays. He's going to be 16 next year.
Okay.
He's lived out a really good life, a couple of twilight years, so to speak. He's still rambunctious, gets the zoomies, and talks like crazy. It's great to have him around.
You grew up in the Chicago area. Talk about growing up. What kind of music was your family listening to?
My music was always a huge part of me growing up. I do say that I probably had to get a lot of my musical knowledge and taste from my mother. She was always playing music and had a tremendous music collection. Her favorite people were Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand. She always had the best new stuff. I remember a lot of Hall & Oates, a lot of Lionel Richie, a lot of Huey Lewis, Prince, of course, Michael Jackson. But growing up, I was lucky enough to have MTV from the very get-go. I remember the premiere of the Thriller video, the long form 30-minute thing, and it just absolutely scared me to death when I was 3 years old. Just remembering the videos and sitting in front of the TV and watching them all day and getting all of that knowledge. That kind of goes into my intro with Bruce. Bruce being such a huge part of the MTV revolution at that time. Growing up, I think I had a couple of different cassettes that I really just tore through all the time that I remember quite a bit. Tina Turner, Private Dancer was a huge one. Of course, Born in the USA, which I still have. I actually still have that cassette. And strangely enough, my father decided to give me Motley Crue "Girls, Girls" when I was 6 years old. The Top Gun soundtrack was huge when I was like 6 and 7. A lot of those really early years really formed me. The first record I ever bought was David Lee Roth's "Skyscraper," which,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I was like, I felt like a cool kid just buying my own little record by
Sure.
myself.
Can you remember when you discovered Bruce
Yeah.
and what about his music spoke to you?
Yeah. My first discovery of Bruce was those long form videos, Dancing in the Dark, Born in the USA, but the one that got me was I'm on Fire. The long version of it where he's the mechanic and he pulls himself out from under the car and the
Yeah.
song fades into it. I just always remember that being like the first bit of music that I felt like I retained, and still to this day is my favorite song of my life. That's the one song I know, and that's the one that's always stuck with me. For me, what spoke to me more later on in life was just the stories that he would tell all of his songs, and the how every song was real and grounded in realness, and everybody could relate to the characters in these stories. Each person listening can mold it in a way that fits their own life and have a part of that. And everybody's had a person in their life that caused them great pain and suffering or made them feel so much joy and love. He brings that out in a lot of his songs and characters and stories. So yeah, that's what really spoke to me.
So have you got to see him live?
I have got to see them live. I probably have the lowest total number of concerts than maybe some of your other guests, but I have seen him live 5 times.
I have had people that have never seen him, so
Wow,
you're okay.
I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I've quadrupled that number in the last 2 or 3 years. The first show I ever saw of his was on the Rising tour. I saw him in 2002 in Birmingham, Alabama. It was like going to church. I felt like I had a religious experience with the Rising being such a dark and deep album, the subject matter being so heavy, and really just the amount of emotion that was pouring out of that album and that tour was really powerful. And then, like I said, a bunch of concerts back to back. I did get to see him on the first run of Broadway.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I have a great story with that. Then I saw him on the first show of this last tour in Tampa. I went to see
Okay.
it. And then I saw both Wrigley shows last year. Quick succession, right back in a row, just trying to get as much before possibly he wants to retire and rest on his Sony money or whatever.
What I make the joke is, and as a Bears fan, a fan of football, it's like when you miss the extra point, often you feel like you're chasing it the
Yeah.
rest of the game because the commentator will say, "Oh, wow, if he could have just made that extra point, but now then they need two scores because they wouldn't have gone for two." I did not see him the first time till the Rising Tour 2001. And I feel like we're
Okay.
chasing, right? I want to get as many shows as I can, though I'm sure people that saw him in the 70s that are up to 100 are trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know. If there was one tour I wish, and I know that Springsteen on Broadway did a good bit of this, but I would
Yeah.
have loved to have seen him on the acoustic tour, like maybe Devils and Dust or even Ghosts of Tom Joad. I think I was a little bit out of him during
Yeah.
the Tom Joad era, but like during Devils and Dust was probably like the highest. And I think he was going to the Ryman and doing a lot of these very intimate sets. That was one I would have loved to have seen. But yeah, I had a long divide between my first and my second show. I could dive into some stories from pretty much
Yeah.
all my shows. Everybody
Well,
has their own Bruce stories, right?
yeah, I'd love to hear that. My
Yeah.
second show was a Devils and Dust show. I saw The Rising, and then I
Yeah.
saw Devils and Dust. That's what I thought Broadway was going to be, but turned out to be something totally different. Please, let's go through a few stories about the shows.
My first show was in Birmingham, Alabama, and it was like going to church.
Living there at the time?
Yeah, I actually was living in Huntsville, Alabama. My family moved me there in 90 when I was young, and I ended up living there through most of my teens and my early 20s. But yeah, Huntsville was very conveniently located between everything, like Birmingham, Atlanta, Nashville. So I visited a
Yeah.
lot of those cities during my time. That first show being in Birmingham, I do have the set list somewhere, but I don't remember which song it was. I just remember this moment where there was an extended outro where each of the members of the band slowly left the stage.
Okay.
And then Danny was playing the organ and had a solo. One by one, each person started playing their instrument. Once Bruce got back into it, they all went right back into the song. Like they
Wow.
never stopped. It was the most mind-blowing moment. I've never seen so many white people go insane. It was
Yeah.
craziness. Lost my mind. It was total God worship from that moment forward.
Yeah.
That was instilled in my mind. I couldn't remember the song that he did, but I wanted those memories again. So that's would lead me to my next story, which would be Broadway.
Okay.
That's a little more crazy because it was a real whirlwind for me.
Sure.
I had just been laid off from my jobs, going out and buying tickets to
Yeah.
Broadway shows, but I owed it to myself and took a really quick impromptu. I booked it like a week ahead of time, flew out. I ended up in an Airbnb with 7 other people in the middle of Hell's Kitchen, and it was right around the corner from the theater. I had 2 objectives: see the show, but meet the man. I really
You
wanted
wanted to do that.
I wanted to do them both. So I was there for 2 days and I was deciding which night to go see the show first or meet him first. I went without a ticket. I am a part of the Spring Nuts group. So I was in contact with several people there, but I knew what I was.
Howie and
Yeah,
Julian, great group.
they were reaching out to me, wanting me to find tickets. So I decided to go without a ticket and join the canceled ticket line. I got there early, and there was one gentleman in front of me. He got waved in. I remember looking at him through the window, and he's giving me the shrug, sorry, you're out of luck type thing. But then literally he walks out, somebody waves me in. I'm literally like the quickest, I'll just say it, $850 I ever spent in my life. I never slapped down my credit card so fast. I ran out. I didn't even look at my ticket. There were some fans there. They're like, box seat. And they're like, oh my God, you're going to be on the side of the stage in one of the boxes. Yeah, I get ushered in. They let me in. I'm on the side of the stage, up on the side of the wall, whatever. I'm looking over, unobstructed view. The piano's down there. And I look over, they open up the curtain, and out in comes Tom Morello and Michael Moore. I shake both of their hands. I had just seen Michael Moore's movie 11/9 at that time. He was very gracious, and I was just blown away. Metallica walks in, Lars is
Yeah.
down there. I think a couple other celebrities, but remember the gentleman that was ahead of me. The one thing with him was, yeah, he got the ticket before me, but I got a better seat. My seat was up against the railing, so I had
Yeah.
unobstructed. He had to stand the whole time.
Oh no.
So he was PO'd quite a
Yeah.
bit, but just that overwhelming rush from that
Hmm.
show, like just the amount of motion, like just sitting there. I remember before it started, and like he strums the guitar, and just the loud ring from the
Yeah.
guitar. Just remember how loud that sounded. It was like, you're here, you made it.
Yeah.
And that was truly overwhelming. It took a couple of songs for it to hit me, and I think My Father's House was the first one to really like, wow, the weight of this moment, still the greatest concert experience of my life.
So
That was probably my
yeah,
greatest Bruce story.
I went to Devils and Dust, and we had seen him at the Rising. It was my wife and 2 of our best friends, and we had nosebleed seats. I was really worried at the time because he's not playing anything that my wife would know, and I really didn't know because I had not listened to The Rising a lot. At the end of the show, Linda, and that's my wife, were you happy? And I said, hey, if he had walked out, done Born to Run Live, and left, I would have been happy. I've seen Born to Run Live. And she
Yep.
goes, good. I'm glad you had fun. So
Yep.
when Devils and Dust came out, I asked her, I said, do you mind if I go? I know you don't want to go, but do you mind? And she goes, no, go. So, Tom, I walk in and it's at the Grand Prairie Theater. There's a stage and then there's a balcony. I'm in the very last row against the wall. Here is the aisle and the door to leave. And on the other side of me is a pillar. So I
Yeah.
have got this seat by
Yeah.
itself. Like, I don't
That's it.
care. I'm in the building. And a guy walks up and says, do you want a better seat?
Oh,
And I'm thinking the same way, like when scalpers, hey, better seats. I went, no, I'm fine. And then it hit me, wait a minute, I'm already in the event. So I walked over and I said, excuse me, do you still have any seats yet? He goes, oh, yeah, sure, here. I take my seat and I go give it to the usher, and the usher goes, yeah, let me get down here. I can't remember if it's row 4 or 5, but it's pretty low.
yeah.
As a football fan might get this joke. They weren't as good as Moose Johnston's seats, but they were better than Babe Laufenberg's seats because I saw both of them. And for those of you who aren't football fans, Moose Johnston was part of the 90s
It's
Cowboys Super
Cowboys.
Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Babe Laufenberg was the backup quarterback for the Cowboys and later became a color commentary for the Cowboys radio network. I was between two Cowboy stars. The people in front of me looked like college kids, and you could just hear the girlfriend, when's he going to do Born in the USA? They ended
Yeah.
up leaving in the middle of the show. So that's not quite getting to meet Tom Morella and Michael Moore, but very well done.
Yeah, it was totally crazy. I was like, whoa, my eyes. But kind of even more starstruck with Metallica. I was just like, oh, wow. I mean,
I did not recognize any celebrities the night I went.
yeah.
I had planned on just flying in and then trying to spend the night at the airport, though I heard after the fact they won't let you do that. My wife insisted, and she searched and found a round trip airline ticket. It included this little pod hotel. It was a perfect little room. You walked in, it had a single bed, it had its own shower, bathroom. It was perfect because all I was going to do was just sleep there till the next morning when my flight left. Any other highlights of the show on Broadway that you mentioned My Father's House, anything else that stands out?
Oh, I believe that night he did Land of Hope and Dreams. It was a huge song for me at that time. I know he was able to do a couple of songs with Patty. I know he was switching up songs during that time a little bit. So it was good to hear those songs with her. But yeah, unfortunately, the second half of my goal or my objective wasn't met. There was a security scare with the Clintons the following night. So I waited all day, had a prime spot right there on the rail. But right when he drove up, they put up these barriers and he was only able to, I was talked to people that were like right in the middle there. So I was maybe 2 or 3 people away from him.
Didn't get that.
No, I had my Born to Run book. I had my Born in the USA cassette tape, little fold out, ready for him to sign, but just missed it based on some security scare. Yeah.
I've only met him once, and that was when Austin, he was doing the book appearances.
Yep.
And I drove down to Austin, stood in line, and got my 7 seconds with him. I technically say I met him. It's not like you're sitting there sharing coffee together and talking. A couple other shows you said you've gone to. Any stories from those you want to share?
I know one of your last guests you had on, you talked about the pricing.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
The Wrigley shows really opened my eyes. The first night wasn't bad. I got field seats both nights. I took my girlfriend at the time. They were probably 500 for the 2 seats. We were on the grass a little farther back, but then the second night, The day they went on sale, I went, let me check out these premium seats. Let me check these out. And
Yeah.
within seconds, I had 2 general admission tickets. I did not even hesitate. I didn't even look. I didn't even care. I just pressed checkout, 2, 3 clicks, didn't even look at the price. And come back, look at my statement. 2 premium seats were around $2,200.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. So I was determined to make that day as special as possible for me and my girlfriend. It was her first 2 shows. And I was like, first 2 shows and second show, you're going to be on the rail. And that is
Yeah.
the spot. So I went through the whole rigmarole with getting a number and waiting to go in. She was like 80 spots back behind me at that time. There was a little bit of concern. Are we gonna? I was like, I'm gonna save you a spot, and we got a spot on the rail towards the left. And unfortunately, that night was very hot. It was a very long day, and by the time I got up there, my back was wrecked. I was in
Yeah.
pain. I couldn't even enjoy the show, honestly. By the time he started, it was hot. My back was hurting. I was just
Yeah.
trying to muster up energy. It was a great show, but he wasn't very active with the crowd that night. I think
Okay.
he was more active with the Wednesday crowd. He didn't come anywhere near me. He walked a little bit in front of me, but other than that, no. So that was a little bit of a bummer. And then, of course, you're
Sure.
talking about the set lists. Like everybody was talking about the static set lists. I think we got trapped that night. That was the big surprise. But now I think he's pulling out all the stops with these latest.
You know what's funny? I've said this and it's heresy, right? Trapped is just another cover to me. I
Yeah.
don't have any special connection to that. If you've listened to the podcast, I've been very clear that one person's treasure is another person's, I won't say trash, but just another, oh, I don't care about that one. And it is really hard for him to change things up enough. Yeah, I get you. I
Yeah.
would have had sticker shock on that a little bit too.
Especially when people were telling me, "Oh, I got these for $200."
Yeah. And I have said that I believe, and I have no control over it, but when you go to Uber, Uber tells you surge pricing. You're currently paying 5 times the normal rate because of volume. And then you can say, screw it, I need to get where I'm going, or no, I'm going to wait till things settle down. And they don't do that. They don't tell you, hey, by the way, you're paying 4 times the rate, because you may go, okay, I don't want to do that. I'm going to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Pearl Jam just recently did 2 shows here. And a lot of people had issues with the pricing, especially because Pearl Jam is on that level with Bruce, where, working man, let's fight against Ticketmaster. Prices are too high, but now they're doing the dynamic too. And apparently, a lot of people had issues selling their tickets at the prices they paid. I certainly wouldn't have gotten what I paid had I wanted to sell my tickets to Bruce, but I was able to get a ticket to the first night for super cheap, great seat, great show. Pearl Jam's amazing. It had been 21 years since I had seen them last in concert, and they're just good as, if not better. They're amazing.
Any final thoughts about some of the other live shows you've gone to?
No, Tampa was the first show on the new tour. They hadn't toured in years, of course. It was a little bit bumpy here and
Yeah.
there. Some technical difficulties. I remember one guy saying, "Oh, I like the newer stuff." I'm like, okay. He wasn't, they were a bunch of buttoned up business people. I was just dancing in the middle of these very buttoned up people, and they're looking at me like I was crazy.
Yeah. And Alba posted on
Yes.
Twitter, someone showed a picture of a couple of video clips, and the guy was like, and that's why I don't go to festival shows. And we were like, F you, let them have fun. A couple years ago, right after the pandemic, Kiss came to Fort Worth, and a bunch of my buddies reached out and said, do you want to go to Kiss with us? I said, yes, I will. And I'd never seen them live. I graduated high school in 77. Kiss is one of Kiss's main time, and we had pretty bad seats, and the guy in front of me stood the whole time. and was just singing every song. Someone said, "Why don't you tell him to sit down?" And I go, "No, I'm the one that's sitting down. This is his Bruce. This is his Springsteen. If I want to see something, I'll stand up or I'll look around him. I'm not going to put a wet blanket on his enthusiasm. It's bad karma."
No, I totally agree. Speaking of first, I recently went to my first Metallica show. They played here at Soldier Field for 2 nights. I went to the first night, and this was very eye-opening. I missed Me and my friends missed the first band, which was Wolfie Van Halen's Mammoth, a great band, much like his father. Not as great, of course, but he plays a lot like him. But Pantera opened for them, so they really brought a lot of like the aggression to the show and a lot of the vulgarity. There was, yeah, they brought it. But what was so shocking to me was just how polite everybody was at a metal show. Metallica was like, hey guys, here are these songs about death and suicide and blood and murder, but kumbaya, we're all friends and we're a family. Oh, here's a bunch of huge beach balls. Let's knock these around while we're listening to Seek and Destroy. I'm like, wow, what is this? So I think Metallica is more of a brand than they
Yeah.
are a band nowadays. They did
Yeah.
72 seasons, which is a great album, but they're not knocking out classics. They're not. Nobody is. Rolling Stone isn't. Bruce, he's doing soul music, and of course Letters to You had some great classics there. But yeah, a lot of these bands are legacy bands. They're just doing albums so they can promote them on tour and do all of these like
Yeah.
full length things. Yeah, I totally get it. But yeah, that was just
Yeah.
like a great first experience, and just really, I don't know how crazy it's going to be, but it wasn't crazy at all.
You talked about losing a lot of weight. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so my parents were both overweight. I was always a very active kid. I loved playing basketball. I loved walking, but I just didn't have the diet in my life to really sustain that activity. I was always a pretty big kid from the jump. And then throughout my 20s, just slowly gained weight, was a little bit less than active. And then I remember at one point, at the heaviest, I was 435 pounds. I was like a 56-inch waist. I was really heavy. And then this was probably 2003, 2004. And then this new thing started coming around called gastric bypass surgery. And
Right.
I was like, let's check it out. I have bad genetics. My parents overweight,
Sure.
diabetic, all of the roadblocks that people meet. So I went in and they were like, we want you right now. You're going to do this. I got no resistance. They pushed me right through. I was a perfect candidate. I was 24 years old, extremely overweight. I didn't have diabetes, no high blood pressure, no high cholesterol. I was just really big. I had little to no complication. I got down to 153 pounds.
Wow.
It was almost too small. I was skin and bones. I had no muscle. I was a boys extra large in shirts. I was shopping in the boys section for waist sizes. I was extremely small. I gained all of that weight back. I got up to 300 pounds over the course of 7 to 8 years with my ex-wife. Then I went on a health journey. I've been on that for the last 10 years. It's a lot of trial and error. I'm still making mistakes nowadays. At almost 44, I'm going to turn 44 here in about 20 or so days. In the best shape of my life. I've been sober almost a year now. That's a lifestyle I'm going to keep for the rest of my life. It just brings me the most physical happiness, the most mental happiness. It challenges me. This is where I want to be. I'm not seeing my 40s as a detriment. I feel as a positive.
Good. Very
Thank you.
nice. Good.
Thank you.
I know it is, as someone who's struggled with his weight his whole life. About 2 years ago, I was really sick, weak. They took me to the emergency room and they said, "God, you're just so anemic." And they turned out I had a huge tumor in my stomach.
Wow.
The guy said, "To fix this, we're going to have to do gastric bypass surgery." He
Mm-hmm.
said, "So, unfortunately, normally we take anywhere from 6 to 9 months to get you ready for it.
Yep.
You've got 6 weeks. We've got to do
Yep.
this." I did it. Everything's fine now. I was 375, 380. I'm down to 320. I would like to be lighter, but it is difficult because the surgery itself is painful, the recovery, and having to do that. And I think especially if you grow up with a big family, especially in the South, food is everything. There is such a social atmosphere of food. Yeah. What should I have asked you that I haven't, Tom? I feel like we've covered a lot of subjects.
I know one that you didn't. What songs do I hope to hear live sometime? I know we talked a
Yes.
little bit about why go for more. So yeah, I love the deep cuts. These songs will probably never get played, and if they get played, I don't know what people will think.
Okay.
But one will definitely people will enjoy. I love the full band version of If I Should Fall Behind.
Okay.
Where they all sing a portion of it. Of course, that's live in New York.
I would love to see that live too. I don't know if we will ever do it, but that would be wonderful.
The clearance part, of course, whether Jake takes that or somebody else.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. And then the other two, I think they're never, ever going to get played. But I say this tongue in cheek a little bit. Pony Boy
Okay.
and Redheaded Woman for reasons. But yeah, they are both songs that I love for both different reasons. I think he touches on most of these songs, but these are just some of the real deep cuts that I don't think he'll ever get around to doing.
Is there any deep cuts you have gotten that you've surprised in your 5 shows?
Oh man, I'm trying to think. A lot of that first show, I probably got some, and I just don't remember. I'm glad I got Burning Train.
I understand you're adjusting the set list, but I would have liked Burning Train. I got Priest twice, so I feel pretty lucky.
But I got that the one night. I would have loved to have gotten I'm on Fire. That's just one song I've never heard live.
You haven't got that yet.
I have seen that he's been playing it, but yeah, I won't be able to know every lyric to Does This Bus Stop at 82nd Street? I'm not that deep of a Bruce fan, but a lot of my roots are in the later years where a lot of them are in the earlier years. So I know a lot of those albums more so than the earlier stuff. So yeah, it would probably be stuff like The Fuse. The Fuse is another one.
Yeah.
That would be a deep cut.
I would I know that everyone loved the show and getting Thundercrack and the bus and everything, and those were great, but I would rather something from Magic or Wrecking Ball just because those were my love, something from Western Stars and everything. So yeah, it is always fun to go chasing that and see. So very nice.
Yes.
Great answers. Think about it in a minute. I'm going to give you final thoughts, but before we do, I got to ask you the Mary question before we go.
Of course.
If you are a friend of Tom's and you're listening, thank you. He made you all very proud. I end every podcast with what we call the Mary question. Yes. And what that is, Jay Armstrong, who is an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He's now retired, but when he was teaching, he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road. They would explore the themes Bruce uses. They talk about his word choices, and then he would ask his class at the end of the day, does Mary get in the car? So Tom, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
The answer is gotta be yes. Why wouldn't she get in the car? The town is full of losers. Why do you want to be a loser? The only way to win is to pull on out of there. Just get on out of there, Mary. Get in there with Bruce or whomever. So while the night is busting open, take the chance and ride out and find out and get crazy. Enjoy life. Get out of that loser town.
Any final thoughts? And how can people reach you?
I'm only really on Instagram, Insta Haes. Final thoughts. Bruce has been an immense part of my life and my musical being. I think he is the greatest. Few other artists could match him. A friend asked me recently if I would see him again in a heartbeat. If he comes anywhere near here, I'm going to see him. Until he stops, I don't know what that day is going to be like for me, but I'm probably going to have to take a couple of days off.
I know that feeling. Absolutely.
Right. That's how much he means to me.
So, absolutely. Tom,
Yeah.
thank you so much for spending time with me and sharing your personal story. It means the world to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Listeners, go to Instagram, follow him. Let me know if you want to join me. I'm always looking for guests. So thank you, Tom. Thank you,
Yeah.
listeners. Everyone, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. There we go. Another episode. I'm about to go through a couple of things where you can reach me and give me feedback. So if you want to skip this, I understand. But I do hope you check it out every once in a while. I'm available on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. The show is available at setlistingbruce. You can send me an email, setlistingbruce@gmail.com. You can send me a voicemail at 469-249-2442. I am currently doing a few other podcasts. Perfectly Good Podcast, John Hyatt from A to Z, where Sylvan Groth and I discuss every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order. My Babylon 5 podcast is Last Best Hope for Conversation, where Lou, Karen, and I discuss every episode of Babylon 5 in chronological order. I still am doing Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast with my brother in time, Charles Skaggs. And then finally, How Many Podcasts, the only podcast on the internet that counts, where my buddies and I discuss pop culture. You can go to our Patreon page and support the podcast for as little as $1 a month. You can go to our Facebook page, like, and please go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast and leave a 5-star rating and review for all of the podcasts that I'm doing. It's okay if you don't listen to them, but if you subscribe and rate, it really will make my day better. Thank you, and I will talk to you soon.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only, Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.